This episode of Reality Escape Pod is brought to you by Morty, Cogs by Clockwork Dog, Buzzshot, and Patreon supporters like you. Hey, escape room owners! Are you sick of trying to figure out the marketing puzzle? Buzzshot's got you covered. It's an all-in-one solution for powering business growth and improving the customer experience. They offer a ton of pre- and post-game features, including waiver management, creating incredible branded team photos, and streamlined review management for Yelp, TripAdvisor, Google Reviews, Facebook Reviews, and they offer integrations with Cogs and Morty. One of the most important parts of retaining your customers and acquiring new customers is review management. There are so many different platforms now where people are writing and reading reviews. Google, Facebook Reviews, TripAdvisor, Morty, and Yelp. Buzzshot will aggregate all of those for you and makes it easier for you to respond to very good reviews, or more importantly, responding to bad reviews. The way you handle responding to reviews really makes a huge difference for your company image. They also will let you search all of the reviews at once, so you don't have to go to each separate platform. It just makes it all so much easier and streamlined so you can get back to running your business. Streamline your marketing and grow your escape room business. REPOD listeners get an extended free trial and 20% off your first 3 months with no setup fees or hidden charges. Visit buzzshot.com/REPOD. That's REPOD to learn more.
Welcome to the Reality Escape Pod, your lifeline when you need a getaway from the real world. I'm David Spira, alongside my co-host, PG Law. Together, we're exploring immersive gaming from all angles, and we'll be joined by guests who really know their stuff. Today's guest is Robert, better known as Fro Myers, co-owner of the iconic Boston escape room company, Boxaroo. Since 2016, Boxaroo has been entertaining players with an incredible range of productions. From escape rooms like Storyteller's Secret to the large format ballroom games like The Perfect Heist, and even a virtual puzzle hunt in the form of Colby's Curious Cook-Off. Boxaroo never misses. Welcome, Fro.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you on. As anybody who listens to the podcast knows, I'm Colby's Curious Cook-Off's biggest fan. I was able to come play all the games at Recon 2 years ago. So we're excited to have you on and dive into all the things. You and Victor Hung formed Boxaroo pretty much right after graduating from MIT. Is that correct?
Yeah, not long afterwards, I had been doing some other design jobs for a while, and Victor had formed Boxaroo with another person in December 2015. In that time where he was building out the first iteration of the Mystery of the Magician's Study, I was bouncing around other design jobs, things like designing museum exhibits, and then working with a 3D printing company, designing educational content for their printers to put those into schools. And I eventually reached out because I wanted to do more entertaining design. And that led me to reaching out to Boxaroo. Never going to forget, I sent a very formal cover letter, resume type email, introduced myself as Robert and all that. And then I get back this response that's like, oh, hey, Fro. Yeah, why don't you come in and we'll chat? And it was like, wait a minute. Oh, Victor. Yes. Okay.
So wait, you knew Victor from MIT, but reached out independently to this company that you thought looked cool, and then it turned out that it was this person that you knew.
That is correct. Yes.
I had no idea. That's wonderful.
Yep.
And for those who are wondering, Victor Hung, he isn't here because we didn't invite him, because there'd be just too much to talk about. He's currently working on bringing his next project, Midnight Mansion, to life, and we will have him on once that's open and entertaining guests. You can also sign up to join the Midnight Mansion mailing list at midnightmansion.com for updates. I would highly recommend that. Anything that Victor is working on, I would bet on it being great. Without further ado, we're going to go and dig into the world of Boxaroo. Talk to us a little bit about the formation of Boxaroo, because it's pretty bold more or less first endeavor right out of college.
Yeah, that is an interesting way to put it. From my perspective, I've been exploring other design and theater and interactive related things in the form of museum exhibits. I did a internship my last year of school at Five Wits, which is now known as Boxfort.
We had Five Wits /Boxfort /Level 99 founder Matthew Duplessis on a couple seasons ago. Classic episode. You should listen to it.
It's a fantastic episode. Matt is a great speaker, a great inspiration for this industry. He was also, in fact, my instructor at a design capstone class that I took. He was the live instructor for my team, which coincidentally was also a big class that Victor and I overlapped in, although we were on different sections, different teams. And that has been a big part of the background of the way Boxaroo has approached design for our experiences in whatever form we're doing. But the sort of formation of Boxaroo, essentially, Victor had found an interesting looking bank vault for rent here in the Boston area for very cheap. He had this idea for an escape room. I'm sure he can provide more details on his background into that. But I basically wanted to do something in this space, something in interactive gaming since I had graduated, or really even before then, since getting to experience Five Wits. And that had led me to reaching out to escape rooms in the area. I had wanted to help with the design and build side of things, not just running rooms and type stuff. And I really wanted to be a part and grow with a business in that regard. Getting the opportunity to jump on that with Boxaroo, not even a year into opening in late 2016, seemed like a fantastic opportunity. It was a bit of a rocky start after that with the things that came immediately after joining up.
And we're going to get to that. We're definitely going to find our way there. To be fair, I had not realized that you weren't there on day one, that you joined shortly into the formation of the company. That's how long you have been there, that I truly had no clue.
It sounds like you basically had literally no choice in life but to go into escape rooms, because you interned for Five Wits, you have a background in set design for theater, you were working with 3D printing. Did you study mechanical engineering in school?
That's what I got my degree in, and at the time was also taking a bunch of theater classes. The first theater class I ever took on campus, one of the things that the instructor insisted we all go see was Sleep No More when it was out in Brookline, here in the Boston area.
Ultra early days.
Yes. Oh, very early. And it has been steeping in the background of my experience. There was a point where it was like, well, I could either go with this Boxaroo thing, or I could get applied to grad school for game design. And I was on a waiting list for that. And I get the call where they're like, are you interested in getting off the waiting list? Are you still interested in being on it? And I was like, no, I think I want to do this escape room thing. I think I've got a good opportunity here. And my dad's advice was, look, for the cost of a business degree, you could just start the business and you'll make your money back faster.
Yes, very on board with that. One of the hallmarks of a Boxaroo game, really dating back to the very beginning, is that your games always seem to showcase this blend of beautiful interaction design, a clear narrative, blend of kind of robust software and mechanical engineering, and all of this was there, at least from my perspective, on day one. We've always viewed Boxaroo as this kind of total package company. Where was all of that coming from?
First of all, thank you for the wonderful words. That's definitely something we've always strived for. A lot of it has just been our strengths, describing the mechanical interactions, the software, the show controls, the lighting and sound. These are all things that we had the background for. The classes I overlapped with Victor with were design in the mechanical engineering side of things and technical theater classes. We were literally working on sound and lighting and set design in these shows for these classes, which they were very interesting stories. We had some interesting teachers, but we learned a lot from it, and especially the things we wanted to carry forward into this endeavor, as well as having that sort of common design language on how to make user-centric design in terms of what is the guest going to find joy in? Where are they going to find the whimsy in what they're doing, the delight, the emotional reaction if we're trying to produce an effect that is going to shock or awe someone, and bringing that to the forefront of the experience.
I love hearing that. User-centric design is what I practice in my regular career. as a UX designer and product designer, it's never come up before explicitly on the show, more implicitly. But you're the first guest we've ever had bring it up. Talk to me a little bit more about how you're applying that when you're designing a Boxaroo game.
Sure. I think the process of designing the game starts with essentially, what do we want them to experience? Some people say, like, what is the wow moment that they're going to do? But we're even more just like, what are the guests doing in the space? What does them solving the puzzle look like? What is the story of the guest going through it? Not necessarily the narrative of the room or anything like that. It's, what is the user going to be doing? And framing the design in terms of that helps us approach it more as a product designing experience, but it does let us highlight all of the elements that we really want to accentuate, or if there are things we're concerned about, if there's unknowns that we have to solve for, highlighting those early on in the design process so we can address them.
That makes sense. So you're really focusing in on what the user, or in this case, the player, is doing, what their arc is going to be, what their actions are going to be, how you're capturing their attention and focusing them on the moments you want to leave an impact.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Can you give an example of what that sounds like, practically speaking? Like when you say what players are doing, you mean like here they're going to be finding like a key to unlock a box, or what do you mean specifically by that?
That's a perfect example. In designing a puzzle, we will sketch out, here's a catchy name, here's what we envision the elements that are being interacted with. Here are what we think the player is going to be doing in the sequence of steps, or what the touchstone interactions are going to be. You know, if they're going to be moving these crystals around, that's the kind of thing that we're planning on them doing. In early design, in the ideation phase, it is very much a, here's what it might feel like, what's the emotional sort of resonance for the player, but it isn't necessarily what are all the inputs and outputs going to be. Not that level of engineering yet.
Are you starting with the emotional goal or the puzzle goal? Like, where do you begin with this as a designer?
It depends. You know, if we're designing a room, we'll pick like a theme and narrow down from there. We tend to think that any given puzzle or interaction that you'll find in an escape room is going to be very fitting for any given theme. We think we can reskin just about anything to anything at this point, but figuring out what that theme is and then how that ties in does spark that creativity and coming up with the ideas.
One of the things that really made me a fan of Boxaroo is that you have an incredible selection of games that stand out as some of the best in the northeastern US. They're consistently strong in production value, in design, in puzzle quality, and they all do feel pretty different from each other. So we wanted to explore some of this a little bit. Now, your first game, Mystery of the Magician's Study, won a Golden Lock Award in 2016. What were the goals and intentions going into this first production?
That is a great question. This is also technically the only Boxaroo room I have gotten to play from that perspective, in that it was running when I reached out and interviewed and tried it out with some friends. And what really struck me with it was a mixture of very interesting tech that definitely worked. It wasn't my first escape room, but it was the first one where we didn't accidentally break something or bypass something.
It was robust.
For the time, it was very robust. And getting to see the backside of it, it was very cool to see how all that tied together. And then just even at that point, getting a little score sheet with your times and everything afterwards was delightful. It felt harking back to like my childhood doing like laser tag and things like that.
Yeah.
We'll get back to the stat sheets a little bit later.
Excellent. Okay.
Mystery of the Magician's Study was built inside of a bank vault, which you mentioned earlier, which led to a lot of fire code complexity and was shut down for a pretty long stretch of time by the city of Boston. What happened here?
The simple answer was that we had started under the assumption that we could do our build out one way, and the city of Boston having different opinions on how that should be done. I say opinions. The actual thing was that we were loading in material to build out the second room at the time, and the building inspector happened to be around the block on his smoke break he comes over and he asks, "Hey, what's going on here?" And the long story short of it was it also turned out he was a huge fan of escape rooms. He knew what they were. He'd played them before. So he was very much like, I know exactly what I want you to do. This was very much like, hey, you cannot be doing this. It feels like I'm just a kid just out of school. I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm doing things right. And the harsh reality of, no, you absolutely aren't, sinking in very quickly.
If you were to boil down your hard-learned lessons from this whole protracted situation, what advice would you give to other creators?
Everything is going to take longer and be more expensive than you think. And then again and again and again. That was half the lesson we learned from this. The other half was just that if you don't have the people in your corner, it can be very difficult to achieve things. Even when the inspector wasn't pissed at us for having created an escape room without going through the proper steps for it, it was just a hassle to be like, okay, we've done everything. Is that it? And then being like, no, wait, here's one more thing. Trying to have that plan, that checklist, and have as many contingencies as you can done ahead of time is ideal, but be prepared for things to change, yeah.
It sounds like expect your budget to be substantially higher than what you are expecting. Make sure that plan isn't brittle and it can change, and approach your local officials early. Be open, be honest. Don't hide anything from them, because if they do find out, you're going to end up with more problems than you would have if you were just transparent. Moving on to your second game, Conundrum Museum, which is one of the puzzlier high-end escape rooms that I have played and has a noticeably different look, feel, and style from Mystery of the Magician Study. What were you going for when you set out to create this game?
I think you hit the nail on the head there in that we were going for puzzles. When I joined, we were in the ideation phase for this room. And so it was very much a, what are the puzzles going to look like? And having mostly come from an MIT crowd and getting a bunch of people in that realm, one of the feedbacks we had gotten for Mystery of the Magician Study was, hey, are these really puzzles? You know, when people are used to the MIT mystery hunt, an escape room certainly doesn't feel the same. We wanted to approach it with, these are very interesting puzzles, potentially ones that we can layer actual puzzle levels on top of and have multiple steps, multiple ahas, multiple extractions, things like that before you can get to the next step.
It is one of the most mystery hunty escape rooms that I have played. I am wondering, what is the influence of that kind of MIT, Harvard, tech, biotech crowd of the Boston area on Boxaroo? How much can you appease that audience, and how much do you have to hold them at arm's length?
It does mean that not all of our rooms are going to be for them per se. And it's been fun over the years seeing the split between escape room / immersive people and which room they like the most, and puzzle people and which room they like the most, which tends to either boil down to, do they enjoy the Storyteller's Secret more than Conundrum Museum, or vice versa. And it's something that we tried to have something for everyone. They're still getting out of there in half the time, even if we turn the difficulty up to the max. And so be it.
There's nothing you're ever going to do to stop the lunatics from the MIT Mystery Hunt.
Yeah, it's my favorite part every January is when people descend on to Cambridge and Boston and stop over to try out all the escape rooms. And almost consistently, they're all done in less than half an hour. It's a nice, relaxing change of pace.
Yeah, I bet. And also, I have to imagine that those puzzles are also a nice, relaxing change of pace for them.
It's fun to also see how people interact with it pre-mystery hunt versus post-mystery hunt in terms of how frazzled everyone is going into it.
That's another layer, because you can't always please everyone, and it's hard enough saying, I have to cater to escape room enthusiasts, but also have rooms good for your average person. And then on top of that, you have to layer in the MIT Mystery Hunt crowd as well.
Yeah, your software, biotech, engineering crowd has a different feel than the families with the 8 to 10-year-olds who want to do their birthday party here. It feels like we've settled on there's maybe a room for everyone, and if you didn't like the room you did, try one of the other ones. There might be something for you there.
Seems sensible. The trend that started with Conundrum Museum was one of diverse design amongst Boxaroo games. If there was any doubt that this was deliberate, Storyteller's Secret clarified the point for us. What was the mindset behind building an escape room like Storyteller's Secret around a story that is a bit mellow and really contemplative, and where the players are not on a high-stakes mission with time running out?
I think it had clarified the thing we'd always been leaning to, which is that we don't want players to be stressed by the clock. And while doing our experiences, we want them to just have a good time and ideally enjoy themselves. The previous 2 rooms had that element of time is running out, you have to do something before then. But we really just wanted to step that back even further, as far as possible, with Storytellers and have it be an interesting and fun and delightful experience.
I think it very much is that. And we have a Spoilers Club episode where we have really explored every inch of that game. So for higher level patrons, that is available for you. But one of the things that I really do want to call out is that Storyteller's Secret remains to this day one of the very few escape rooms that I have played that really does feel soft and tender in its story. It's not over the top in any of the ways that escape rooms that tend to land on the Turpica list are. It's understated, it's small, it's intimate, it's really quite beautiful, and it's so unusual. I love it.
That means a lot to hear. Secretly, the pitch Victor came to me with was he wants it to be about memories and going back into them. We had this very tiny space ultimately, and we had kicked many ideas around for how to fill it. And ultimately, the first one was just not great. I was very early on my let's pitch a theme and story type thing, and it didn't really land. And then after that, we had went through some of our design process with one that ultimately proved too confusing. We couldn't boil it down into a pitch to tell friends and colleagues about to see if they were excited for. And then eventually we scrapped that and moved to the current going into storybooks, but also memories about someone and what they have ostensibly done in their life and revisiting those.
It's funny that you mention it's a small space because it doesn't feel small. Maybe it feels intimate, but it doesn't feel small. And yet there's like multiple rooms in this game that you unlock as you go further in. So I think it was a great use of space.
Thank you.
It's kind of like a book, bigger on the inside.
Well put.
We're taking a moment to thank our sponsor, Morty. Morty is a free app for discovering, booking, tracking, and reviewing escape rooms, haunts, and other immersive social outings. Morty is available for all to use on its fantastic website experience, iPhone and Android apps. I believe in Morty so much that I have a stake in it as an advisor. We asked Morty for some data on instant booking, and it turns out that 60% of Morty's instant bookings are Sunday through Thursday, off-peak days. We know that escape rooms make most of their money Friday through Saturday. So this is a fantastic way to fill more downtime. And that is something that escape rooms badly need. And for players, those of you who are listening, booking off-peak hours, Monday through Thursday, that is the best way that you can help out your favorite local escape room companies. This is the time that is harder for them to fill. They're going to sell out Friday and Saturday and a lot of Sunday, but you can help out these companies by booking off-peak. And owners, Morty can help you get more off-peak sales. You can learn more at morty.app/repod. That's REPOD to sign up and get a special badge for our listeners. Link and details in the show notes.
So as you had mentioned earlier, all 3 of your in-person escape rooms provide a printout showing all sorts of player stats from the game. It was one of the coolest things we got coming out because I'm one of those kids who I always scored very highly on tests and I love getting my test results. How did this come about?
This was very much a Victor special, as we like to put it here. It started with the original Boxaroo Mystery of the Magician Study Room, keeping track of when people did it. The goal had always been to have some sort of memorabilia, a small hint of like remembering what you did, and that delight of you can compare what you did well versus other teams and how you felt about it. So it was very tricky going into Storyteller's Secret of how to present that data, but we think we landed on a good way to capture that feeling of seeing your progress.
So what are some of the stats that you capture that are shown on the sheet?
Ultimately, we try to capture as much as possible for our own data purposes, but it's keeping track of when groups solved what puzzle for ones that could be a little bit more linear or that are low tech enough in Conundrum Museum and Magician Study that we're not capturing that data directly. You can see like the linear progression of how you made it through the room in what time. It also has the record time, so whatever group did it fastest over the life of the room, and what the average time calculated from all preceding data sets is.
Does it also show when you solved it versus when the median average, most teams solve it at 20 minutes and you solved it at the 15-minute mark?
Yeah, so it'll compare like, yes, this is the average time for when this puzzle got solved. You can see, you did it faster than average here, and then you were slower here. Or maybe you had a bit of a sequence break and you accidentally solved this before you were supposed to. So your graph is going to look a little off. It just turns into a fun story point for the groups that did that.
This is such an MIT overachiever kind of thing.
It feels that way, but it's also just a fun way to represent the data. It's something Victor was very passionate about, and we were super excited to carry forward through all of the rooms.
On the other end, do you use any of the aggregate data to adjust the games?
That's a great question. We have used it primarily in terms of analyzing the hints we give. It will have a little number in the bottom for how many hints were given versus the team average. We can go back and see like which of those hints were specifically, so we can keep track if, God forbid, a specific room or puzzle is getting too many hints. We're having to play this one all the time. We usually just get a more anecdotal feel for that based on the game summaries that our wonderful staff provide internally after every run. But we do keep track of that stuff to try and say, hey, where are the really bad friction points, or if something just isn't working.
That makes sense to me.
Do you want to integrate tech into your game but don't really know where to start? Are you looking to take your experience to the next level with theatrical lighting and sound cues? Cogs by Clockwork Dog is an easy-to-use platform that will automate your escape room and immersive events. Their plug-and-play hardware works seamlessly with their software, so you can create a game with high-tech puzzles that will reliably trigger, complete with sound and lighting effects. Whether you're an absolute beginner or a seasoned pro, Cogs has a solution for you. One of the reasons that integrating tech into your experience feels really intimidating is because not only do you have to master programming and software, you also have to deal with a bunch of hardware and different items. And Cogs really simplifies that for you, but they still provide a really robust solution. They have plug-and-play hardware that connects to various interactive elements. So they have these master hardware boxes. It connects your inputs to your outputs over a local area network. Now you can use these master boxes for different props, not just a single one. So you don't need different control boxes or separate Arduinos for every single prop. You can use it to connect various interactive elements like buttons, switches, servos, and lights. So for example, you can make a puzzle that when you press the buttons in the correct order, the chest will slowly open, a light comes on above it, and music plays. And you can create all of this using their hardware. Imagine the possibilities. REPOD listeners get 50% off the Cogs starter set, plus free shipping to the US. Use code REPOD at checkout. That's REPOD. For any questions about using Cogs or integrating tech into your escape rooms, make sure to join the vibrant community of creators on their Discord server. Learn more and start designing your game using their free tutorial by visiting cogs.show. Link and details in the show notes. During the pandemic, you released Colby's Curious Cook-Off, a virtual puzzle hunt played through a website that is approachably challenging, adorably thematic, and it is wrapped up in a very functional web interface that is both charming and easy to use. Were you intentionally trying to make one of my favorite pandemic-era games, or was it all just a happy accident?
As much as I would love to say it was laser targeted to you, PG, that is just a happy accident in terms of we wanted to put out a different product, but still aiming for the best version of that product that we could.
This was the game that got me really interested in puzzle hunts. You know, before, a lot of the ones that I'd seen were like, I didn't even know how to make heads or tails. Where do I start? And this one not only had a really cute, charming story, but the puzzles were pretty approachable. You had different levels, and it said whether this was a harder or more difficult one. And the thing that I really loved was the functionality of the website, because a lot of times puzzle hunts, they're pen and paper, and it's like you have to print it out or you just have to use your imagination to make things work. And this one, you had tools that let you like draw on screen, or you could actually move. If say you had to match pictures to words or something, you could actually move them around on the screen as opposed to it just being like a static image. And that really made a huge difference for being able to play around with the objects and learn how the puzzle worked. So was that a part of the design process? Was that like, we have to make the website more functional than these puzzle hunt websites usually are?
I think it was something that came later. I mostly led in the sense of we need to put something out there, right? At the time, of course, everyone was trying the virtual thing. Strap a GoPro to your chest, walk around the escape room for people to see. We thought our rooms were too tactile and too atmospheric to really capture that sense. And we also had no idea how long this would go on for. So we just said, hey, it's April. We're all stuck inside. We like puzzle hunts. Could we just try writing a simple one? And in that sense, we, as a team, took this challenge on of dividing and conquering, theming it, writing the puzzles. And then Victor very much wanted it to be the next level in terms of that interactive and accessibility.
Next level achieved.
Definitely, yeah.
On top of all of this, you have made a few large format ballroom games for large groups and corporate events and the like. We featured 100 Earth Days at Recon Boston back in 2022 and just gave The Perfect Heist a Golden Lock Award. What is the motivation behind building high quality large group games?
It's partly addressed the need of when we were closed, we wanted to still put something out there to keep people interested in playing what in Boxaroo as a brand and as getting hype for the next experience, the next escape room. The original Perfect Heist debuted in February 2018. I think it was Super Bowl weekend, which may have been a mistake, but we still managed to sell out just about everything, which was super exciting for the two shows of that we did. Part of it had just grown out of seeing other versions of that idea of a game going around in terms of the scrap ballroom games, and being impressed by things they had offered and wanting to make our own spin on that and do the things that we can do in terms of prop work and production in that aspect and general puzzle writing that we think we like to do, and then elevate that. And each time since then, we've wanted to reiterate and improve upon those elements to make it more ideally sustainable, repeatable, and deployable to different groups and audiences.
There aren't a ton of companies that are exploring this space. It's largely you and Scrap. There are a handful of others, but it's not a big part of the escape room world, even though it's one of the very first forms of escape rooms. I am wondering, how strong is the market for this? How often do you get to run these games?
It's definitely been a lot more lately. We've been seeing more interest in this come in over the past year, and that was even up from the year before, which was up from the year before. Obviously, a bit of a reason for large groups to not gather there for a while, but we have seen more requests for this for corporate groups. Most of the demand for it is really just we have people reaching out because they want to do an activity for more than 30 people, which is what we can achieve with our current capacity. It is a great tool, though, for those slightly larger audiences and getting to run it. Let's see, we've done it, I want to say, 2 or 3 times this year already, and we have at least one more hopefully coming up and a few more interested parties in it.
I'm thrilled to hear that.
We are too.
Can we actually talk a little bit about what is a large format ballroom game for anyone who's never experienced one? Like, how do they work? How many people can they accommodate?
Sure. The way I generally like to phrase it to people that we have to sell this idea on is it is a game where your team of 6 to 8 people are all going to be seated at a table working on different puzzles, and occasionally you have to go up, maybe interact with an actor to advance the story. And this is happening to multiple teams at once, anywhere from 5 or 6 to 20 plus teams. So you're talking about being able to run this for over 200 people if you wanted to.
That's awesome. And there's physical props as well as pen and paper style puzzles.
Yes, there's a fun mix of both, as well as some actor interaction style puzzles or payoffs for different things you might do.
I'll say that you collectively push this to a degree that we don't usually get to see. The level of interaction, the use of performers. It's not over the top. There's not like tons and tons of giant props and tons of actors everywhere, but you really do maximize the stuff that you put in front of folks. And the props that you do give are really beautifully designed and incredibly detailed. We can talk about in the bonus episode about my favorite little detail in the perfect heist that is just there for a very specific subset of nerd.
It is, yes.
Now, you only run these games for like large corporate groups or conventions like REPOD when they're like, we want to run it for 100 plus people or whatever. But do you ever throw these yourselves, selling public tickets, 1 ticket, and like you're putting on a large game yourself and just it's open to the public?
Yeah, typically if we're debuting a new game, that is the time that we are running it. And we ran Perfect Heist in 2018 doing that, which was also the announcement for Conundrum Museum coming out later that year. And then tying that back to in January 2020, we debuted 100 Earth Days as sort of our revamp of that. We booked a warehouse here in Somerville for an entire weekend. We ran multiple shows of The Perfect Heist again and multiple shows of 100 Earth Days. And it was really just a blast.
As a business model, do you think that is more or less sustainable than running an escape room that you have to rent a permanent location for?
I would say the escape rooms are definitely the more sustainable model. Part of the joy in doing the large ball games is just seeing everyone's reaction to it and getting to do it in this bit of a different experience. Part of the business payoff is that if we run it publicly, we can collect data on how it performed and then use that to refine it. The goal has been to repeatedly run it again for private clients, corporate groups, conventions, that sort of thing. And that really lets us defray our design and build out costs, which tend to be the bulk of it.
That's really sensible.
Even with the larger throughput, you think an escape room is still more sustainable than that?
Because we're only doing it for the one time, an event space, usually not as cheap as a permanent location once you build it out, turns out.
I can tell you, events and event space expensive. There is one little detail I want to toss in, just to facilitate running these games. Your partner, Arcturus, who does so many behind-the-scenes things for Boxaroo, keeps a list of venues in the Boston area to run events, places like rehearsal studios and church basements and all of that kind of stuff. I don't really have a question here, but it's one of those little details that I learned last year that I love so much.
It's one of those things where over the years of people requesting this and us trying to find ways to put it on for people, we have had to reach out to the most random locations as possible venues to run it out of. So yeah, we have quite the spreadsheet of possible venues to host things in.
It's great. Love the list. Love the ballroom games. And hope there's a new one at some point because I would love to come up and play it.
It's on our list of things to get to. It's just a very busy list in the near future.
Can relate.
Do you have a secret formula when it comes to creating these large format group games that feel site specific and yet can still cater to people of various experience levels and keep such a large group entertained and occupied all at the same time?
That is a very multifaceted question, and there's a lot to go through. Part of the things like a site-specific type event is just trying to plan ways to interact with space in terms of what sort of props are we putting, what sort of display work or set pieces can we utilize in a given space. If we're putting something on a poster and then spreading that around the space for people to see, that's a good way to interact with that sort of thing. Posters specifically have been more of a challenge as more and more high-end venues are like, what do you mean you want to blue tack something on our walls? What are you doing? That's a fun, separate event there. But yeah, I think the ultimate element is like, if our philosophy for each of the escape rooms is it's trying to appeal to a different audience, we try to target that with the events too. Is this event going to be a little more puzzly? Is it going to be a little more character or actor integrated? And what are the interesting pieces that we want to dump all of our development points and time and effort into? We can only have so many late nights of sitting at a laser cutter cranking things out or painting things to be perfect before we have to say, no, this is good enough and we're just going to ship it.
There's a question that I have been wanting to ask a guest on this show since day one. It has taken until season 8 for me to finally be able to ask it. Fro, how has playing Magic the Gathering influenced you as a game designer?
That is a fantastic question, and I'm so glad you get to ask it. Magic has always been a very fun and interesting game to get to play with friends and that side of things. Playing it has taught me about what is a game like and what are the points there. Later on, my friend Duncan introduced me to something called Cube, which is a custom curated draft format that you get to come up with. And looking into that got to both satisfy my game design itch and also really turned me on to, how do you use design as a concept in different ways? I think many similar design practices for an escape room could also apply to designing a draft environment in the form of a Magic the Gathering cube.
When you say a draft environment, what does that mean?
There's many layers here in terms of how to play Magic the Gathering and what that is like.
I'd say Magic is less a singular game and more a game system that you can go and play in all sorts of different ways with the cards. A draft environment is where you make a pool of cards and then everybody gets a pack of cards. They pull one and then they pass to the right, and they pull one and they pass to the right. And they basically build their deck on the fly. And then you play against each other with the decks that you built through improvisation based off of the pool that you had. And you as a player feel like you fully improvised this deck. But the person who designed the draft environment, in this case the cube, actually does a lot of work thinking about what are the different styles of play, what are the different mechanics that we're going to use, how do they all interplay with one another. So there is somebody who is designing that pool of cards that you play with, and then you within it as a player design the deck that you want.
Okay. I've played a few draft-style games, and I guess I never realized that's what they were called.
Basically, all of the drafting games that you have ever played at a game night are born out of draft, which was born out of Magic the Gathering. It was something that players started doing. It was a format that was created by people saying, what happens if we just took a whole bunch of packs from this set, opened them up, and then just started drafting from it and built a deck out of it? And in the early days, Magic didn't plan for that. But modern Magic, and for decades now, every single set is designed as a draft environment.
Definitely, yeah. And I've been a fan of other board games and deck builders specifically as a genre for a while, and that Magic getting to satisfy that with both the game engine and the cards and the interesting things going on there, but then also getting to apply the game design background and experience in trying to curate a fun way for people to play. It's like getting to make your own board game, except you're not paying to have to print all the different pieces of cardboard and everything. You're paying for the Magic cards, which are ostensibly more expensive, but it's still a fun environment and way to do it.
So what is a piece of knowledge from mechanical engineering that you wish more creators in the immersive world knew and employed?
That is an interesting question and not one I'd really thought about. Mostly the way I have had to apply engineering principles has been in the problem-solving aspect for how to do things, and also from the user-centric design aspect. So in the sense of, can you design things better? I would say the thing I wish more people would do is design for reset of your rooms. Plan how that is going to go, both in terms of the flow, the time, and just the general user experience of your staff resetting the room for you. In terms of actual mechanical engineering principles, probably what's going to be most durable and how to build things that aren't going to break and aren't going to suck.
That sounds like good advice.
Yeah.
Your MIT Mystery Hunt team, Death and Mayhem, won in 2024. So you are part of the crew that is currently producing the 2025 hunt. I know that you can't share anything specific, but what can you share with us about the process and your role in it?
We're very excited to be a part of it, and this involved pulling in a few more people from Boxaroo who weren't on the specific winning team. But both myself, my partner Arcturus, our wonderful engineer Bree, we're very excited to be a part of the writing side of the MIT Mystery Hunt this year. In many ways, it is like designing an escape room in that you're trying to write puzzles and connect them together ostensibly. And in a different sense, it's completely different because it's like 100+ cats being herded towards that, except not even herded. Death and Mayhem, in living up to its name, can be more of a self-perpetuating autonomous collective that is barreling towards a mystery hunt. Certainly, I think by the end of it, I will have a lot more thoughts on the process and how that relates. But for now, especially given my role in Boxaroo and everything going on with the company right now, I am very much just along for the ride with Death and Mayhem.
You've mentioned that there's other things going on with Boxaroo. So beyond the mystery hunt, what comes next for you guys?
It's the thing we've been most excited to try and do, which is build more escape rooms. Specifically at this time, we are looking in the Boston area for a second location to build out more escape rooms. The big thing that we're going for with this next concept is a more connected tissue between the rooms, a more overworld type feel, so that it is not just you're walking down the hallway and into the room that is disconnected. We definitely hit something great with the 3 different flavors and skill levels and puzzles and design elements of our current 3, but we want to include the design outside the room as well and have the entire experience of the venue, of being there, as part of it.
I think I speak for everyone when I say, more Boxaroo games, please.
The cinematic universe of Boxaroo.
We have certainly joked about the BCU before and how to make that happen. So I think the goal is more games. The goal is more games soon. We just have a lot of work to do going there. I definitely didn't expect this year to be, oh yeah, we just have to do 2 things. We have to write Mystery Hunt and open a new location. But that's what my to-do list is shaping up to be.
Easy peasy.
So if anybody out there has a location for you or just wants to connect, find out more about what you're doing or has any questions, how can they follow you and your work?
The easiest way is follow Boxaroo. We're on most social media platforms. Big ones are Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We even have a wonderful social media manager who's now taking the helm of that and producing our content. And I think they're doing a bang-up job with all of that.
They are. It's lovely.
Thank you.
We'll have links in the show notes.
Fro, thank you for joining us. It has been just such a pleasure to get to know you and Victor and the entire Boxaroo crew over the years. We've had some really lovely opportunities to collaborate at Recon Boston, and watching you all go from this kind of unknown company to this wonderfully creative and consistent powerhouse has just been a joy. And the variety of things that you have made, it didn't even dawn on me until I was prepping for this interview, just how many different things in different mediums you have made that I and the whole Room Escape Artist team have loved so much. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for those kind words. And thank you for being the cheerleaders of such a fantastic community that we get to be a part of.
I also want to mention for our audience that every single time throughout this interview that David has said something nice about Boxaroo, Fro has made little heart hands, and it has been really, really adorable.
This episode of Reality Escape Pod is produced by Teresa Piazza with support by Lisa Spira and Richard Burns. We're edited by Steve Ewing of Stand Inside Media, music by Ryan Elder, logo by Janine Proct, and all of this is brought to you by RoomEscapeArtist.com, your home for well-researched, rational, and reasonably humorous escape room and immersive gaming content and events. Reality Escape Pod is mainly supported by Patreon backers. Creating these episodes takes a lot of time, care, and money. We're invested in creating a robust community of creators and enthusiasts, and we need your help. A lot of big content creators, they reach a point where their Patreon is so big that they don't know who is joining. I promise you, we are aware every single time someone backs us. We know who our long-term backers are. We send out handwritten letters, wax sealed by hand, to every single person who backs us on Patreon. We as a team celebrate every single person who joins because it means so much to us. The ongoing support that we get from our patrons is everything. It is so hard building a media business in this era, and we are only able to do it because of the continued support of so many wonderful people. And if you have not yet joined, I hope that you can consider it if it's something that you can afford. And for everybody who is supporting, we do provide a lot of extra content that we put a lot of love into. Every single episode has a bonus after show. In between seasons, we also make extra bonus content that only goes out to patrons. And we also have, for our higher level supporters, the Spoilers Club, where we dig deep into escape rooms and talk about everything that went into the making of them, the running of them, and the behind the scenes with the creators. Both shows are a labor of love, just like the one that you just listened to. To learn more, visit patreon.com/roomescapeartist. Link and details in the show notes. I would also like to thank our highest level Patreon supporters: Karen, Byron Delmonico, Mark from Keystone Escape Games, Paula Swan, Rex Miller, Chris Laughlin, Panic Room, Pat at Olivier Escape, Escaparium, Breakout Games, and Derek Tam. Thank you for your ongoing support. If you're looking for a way to support Reality Escape Pod that doesn't cost a dime, go on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a 5-star review. Bonus points if you say some kind words. We put so much love into every single episode, and it means the world when you tell other people that this show is worth listening to. There's a lot of podcasts out there, and social proof matters. Your words matter. They help us immensely.
This is a really fun story about when we had to load in a bunch of stuff from one location to another. We were building things off-site in Cambridge at a co-working space and moving them into Boxaroo. We'd rented a box truck, and for those not familiar, Boston has a very fun tradition of storooing, where box trucks are not supposed to go on a specific road, and every moving day they somehow end up on Storrow Drive and getting hit on the underside of ridges and having the tin can ripped off. I found myself driving the box truck back from Boxaroo to return it in Cambridge and ending up on this particular roadway. I'm in the driver's seat, Victor's navigating right next to me, and we're sitting there going, oh no, okay. The height of the box truck is this much. The bridges are saying this much on like the different sides. I think if we weave, we will be able to get the box truck just underneath stuff and approaching everyone at a very slow coast as we're going underneath. The upshot of the story is we managed to make it through from Government Center to the exit at the Harvard Bridge going across to MIT. So thematically, we escaped Storrow Drive without any permanent damage.